There are three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. The quote attributed to the late, great Mark Twain way back when. And now, who knew more than 150 years or so later, it's kind of the Marlins mission statement. Here's an organization that has told us that they're looking at the eye on the now and the future, and they're going to spend a little bit this year and so forth. And there we are with the Marlins a day after they trade Jesus Luzardo, the latest to go. The fire sale is in full swing, and it's almost probably complete. But we're going to dive into that today on our podcast with the great Jeremiah Geiger. And before we get diving in, we're going to, obviously, we're going to dive into a lot on the Marlins in this one. We weren't really planning on doing anything before Christmas and Hanukkah, but the trade popped up, and it's something we needed to address. So I thank Jeremiah Geiger for joining us. Obviously, everyone, please like, subscribe to the channel as we're growing our channel. But without further ado, Jeremiah, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Joe. It's always good to talk baseball with you, and I'm really looking forward to this episode in particular.
Yeah, and we're going to tee it up, and this hits on so many levels because Jesus Luzardo is a South Florida product. He is a Marlin fan from his youth. He wanted to be here. He was part of what was at one point a very promising rotation, which in my opinion should have been enough, because I think your window to win is when your pitching is ready to win. That's when you go for the other pieces and do it. That proved true in 2023 when the Marlins made the playoffs. And Jesus Luzardo, with a couple more years of club control and arbitration, obviously an injury risk. Obviously, last year didn't pan out. But, Jeremiah, I think this is as much a money dump, as much as they'll never admit that, as it is a move to get rid of somebody. I honestly believe they didn't want to pay close to $6 million or whatever his arbitration number would have been, and risk what happened last year, where he gets hurt again, and they were on the hook for $5 million last year, and he only gave him like 12 starts and wasn't necessarily tearing it up. So I think it's kind of a salary dump. They did get a good prospect in there. We'll dive into the specifics on the players in a minute, but the overall big picture, it's clearly a sign they're kicking success years down the road. They never just come out and admit it. We know that they lie internally, or they lie publicly, internally. They say whatever it is to their chosen media that gives them friendly and publicity. But we know that that this, just be forthright. Just be forthright, and they haven't been since day one. I won't let them off the hook on that. And your thoughts?
Yeah. First off, I woke up the other day, and it happened early in the morning, early Sunday morning. Jesus Luzardo traded to the Phillies. Let's not forget it's a division rival he's going to, which you hate to see interdivisional trades usually, unless you're getting a substantial return. I immediately started doing some research. Starlin Caba, the Phillies, young guy, 19 years old. I like him. I like him as a prospect. I think he is probably one of the better prospects the Marlins have received since they started kind of this teardown early last year in May with Luis Arias. But ultimately, it felt underwhelming, and this isn't to hate on the Marlins or to hate on Starlin Caba, who I think is an elite defender with the potential to be a 300 average hitter. Like, he has a very good contact bat, switch hitter. But the issue I have, and this is what I've said before, is not necessarily the trade. I knew the trade was going to happen. Luzardo was not going to be here. It's the execution of it. And when you're talking about execution of a trade at the big league level, you have to take multiple things under consideration. The first thing I think with Luzardo especially is the timing of this trade. You see, he pitched 12 games last season. He came off an injury-riddled season, was not shut down by the club until it was too late, and then reports broke a couple weeks ago that he's fully healthy. from Luzardo himself. He says, I'm ready to go. I'm going through my full offseason routine. And 2 weeks later, he's traded. So it makes you wonder why that was kind of public knowledge, the media pushing out Luzardo's a full go, he's healthy. And to trade him to a division rival just shortly after that, it makes me wonder why you can't wait until spring training. Why can't you let him show on the field, get the StatCast metrics, show he has the velocity back before you trade him? Because objectively, Joe, it's an objective fact. If he comes into spring training and is healthy and pitches effectively, he'll get a bigger return. The Marlins settled. They completely settled in this trade right now.
Yeah, it's almost like last year. Remember, he was going to be our opening day starter, but it was early after Bendix came on board. He's also being chopped, which is the most, that puts Skip Schumacher immediately. Nobody wants to, let's look a year later and who was right. And we were both, banging a drum on this. It sends the message, like the messages you send to your team. So what are the messages the Marlins are sending to their team? Clearly, any veteran with any, money coming to them is not part of what's going on here. To kids, there's an excitement level, the young players, because there's opportunity. So they're kind of like, yeah, trade everyone. I'm going to, this is going to be great. So then you put the disconnect, which is why Berger ultimately had to go, because they're going to do this. And you don't need the Jake Bergers and Jesus Luzardos in the room when they're ready to win. And you got a bunch of kids in there ready to get their feet wet and are going to make young player mistakes. And you create a very awkward clubhouse dynamic. And, I go back when the Marlins back in 2005, when they traded everybody, after the 2005 season for 2006, when Joe Girardi came in after Jack McKeon exited. And that's when they did their big fire sale, and Carlos Delgado was gone and everything. And they had a chance to keep Josh Beckett. They ultimately kept Miguel Cabrera, Dontrell Willis, and they gave very serious thought to keeping Josh Beckett because he was still very much under club control. But they were like, here we are. We could keep Josh, but here's a World Series MVP just a few years earlier who's clearly his profile had risen. He had actually a very good year, probably his best statistical regular season in 2005 with the Marlins. I think he won like 15 or 16 games, stayed healthy the whole year. And they're like, Josh Beckett's mentality is to win, and would he be the right fit in a clubhouse that's going to be really young? So that was a big part of the decision to package Josh with Mike Lowell, send him to Boston in what turned out to be an amazing baseball trade, because Hanley Ramirez, Anibal Sanchez, and others came to Miami. And obviously Beckett and Lowell were a big part in the 2007 Boston Red Sox World Series championship. So that's why that happened. So I think of these type of things that that you're keeping Luzardo around when you're clearly going young. So you got to kind of scale it to bare bones. Okay, so you're moving him. Last year they should have moved him. Didn't. It bit him in the butt because he got hurt, and they never got the return. That's why I think it's a money dump. Now we will, and I still got a lot of sources in this sport, so I immediately reach out to people I trust who have seen these players: Starlin Caba, Marion Boyd. Boyd just seems like a fourth, fifth outfielder type. He has some upside as a reserve, but those are a dime a dozen. But he could be up in the big leagues at some point. Caba clearly is the headliner, and from one person likes him a lot. Thinks he could be an all-star caliber player. The glove obviously plays. The bat is light. Most people think the return for Jesus Luzardo overall was light. That Bendix didn't exactly, knock it out of the park on this one. But we like the player. And we do. He's apparently high energy, very good leadership skills. Obviously is very, defensively, at least he fits the profile of a shortstop. Xavier Edwards isn't really a shortstop. Connor Norby isn't a shortstop. Otto Lopez isn't a shortstop. We have all these second base profile guys. So at least they got a profile shortstop. So we like the player, no doubt. What we don't like, and we touched on this before we hit the record button, and I mentioned this on X yesterday in a little spirited debate with some of my buddies, we don't like Peter Bendix using the word superstar. He could be a superstar. So we're going to spend a few minutes kind of diving into the use of that word, and I'm going to tell you my feelings on why I feel that Bendix was completely off base doing that. Is, for one, superstars, when you're talking young projectable players, they tend to be your $300 million players. These tend to be your can't miss young prospects who dominate the second they hit pro ball. Who comes to mind as a superstar? If you want to do a shortstop, most recently, Bobby Witt Jr., superstar. There wasn't iffiness with Bobby Witt Jr. Jackson Churio, Milwaukee Brewers, superstar. And what do these guys also get? Extensions, contracts, long-term deals right away. If you want to do history of the Marlins, 20-year-old Miguel Cabrera, superstar. He was known as that at 16, that he was going to be a superstar. Giancarlo Stanton, big leagues at age 20, superstar. He was hitting 40 bombs in A-ball and just dominant numbers. Jose Fernandez as a pitcher, superstar. Hits the big leagues at 20. We can take it on and on. Ronald Acuna, Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, I think, if I didn't mention him. These are superstars. You don't just say Starlin Caba is in that class when you already acknowledge we're not sure if the bat's going to be legit.
Right.
So and he just turned 19. He's not hitting the big leagues until, if you want to believe Pipeline, ETA of 2028. Right. Now, you can put him in the big leagues tomorrow. Marlins have done that already with some players, just to say, look, we got our guys in the big leagues. But make them ready. And please don't. It makes me wonder, and I tweeted this earlier. Everything is interchangeable with this. Players to this regime, interchangeable. Buzzwords, sustainable. Oh, it's sustainable. Infrastructure, talent. All these are kind of their buzzwords that they like. All teams, it's kind of duh, but do they honestly believe? And I'll go back to Miles Lewis, who lost his job. He was in analytics. He referred to on a podcast with the Fish on First guys as Xavier Edwards, as he could be a superstar. And don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest Xavier Edwards fan. North Broward Prep, great kid. We want him to excel. But do they just liberally throw the word superstar around in their front office that anybody, if they hit 300 for a couple of days in AAA or whatever, that now they could be a superstar to make the market, to sell to the market, while Juan Soto's getting $700 million and, and all these other, it's like, give me a break. They're not superstars. They could be all-stars. There are a lot of people who are all-stars who end up not being great careers, but don't use that word.
No. The fact that Peter Bendix openly used that word for, I believe, the first time describing any player in the Marlins system. I saw a tweet earlier that was the first time Peter Bendix had referred to a player as a quote-unquote superstar. And I was just taken aback by that because you said it. There's a few superstars in baseball. Baseball, hitting a baseball, we'll stay on the offensive side, is the toughest thing to do in sports. And there are some players who are really, really good at it. Shohei Ohtani, pitching, hitting, is a superstar. The best of the best. Mookie Betts, I would say, superstar. Acuna in our division for the Braves comes up, I believe, debuts at 19 years old, very young, superstar. The issue,
but everyone knew that, Jeremiah. I don't mean to interrupt.
Right.
We all knew the pedigree was there. Vlad Guerrero Jr. The hype. People like, MLB Network's doing countdowns to days these guys could be called up. You just don't throw the freaking word around.
You look at the draft, not the draft grade, but the trade review, the trade grade from prospect guys who know and have watched Starlin Caba. They're not rating the Marlins return as an A+, because that's what you would rate their return if you're getting us true superstar back. Okay, let's take it back a few years. While, say, Ronald Acuna was in the minors, if the Marlins had traded Jesus Luzardo to the Braves for Ronald Acuna, everybody would lose their mind because Acuna was a superstar. You knew he was coming up into the majors and he was going to dominate. That there's some players you just know that. Starlin Caba, there's some questions with him. And when there's questions with his bat in particular, you can't call him a superstar when A, he's barely played at Class A ball. He hasn't even hit high A, let alone double A. So let's temper our expectations for now. Let's call it how it is. He has a very good profile and he has a ton of development to do. But why put that out there and try to appeal to the fans saying, hey, look what we got. We think he can be a superstar. Just don't say that, and it doesn't make sense to me why Peter Bendix, and I don't believe it's him directly saying that. I think there's a lot of other people involved in this deal, involved in the verbiage he's putting out there, but it was a head scratcher to be sure. I've never seen that.
And this, if the public out there thinks and we're being a little nitpicky and, oh, come on, whatever. And that means he can't be a superstar. It's for one, there's enough pressure on a 19-year-old player, even a 19-year-old Ronald Acuna, a 19-year-old Bobby Witt Jr. There's enough pressure to begin with.
Right.
Without adding to that with an expectation level that could ultimately be harmful to the player. So a lot of times you won't hear organizations even use that word when they are fortunate to have. The Marlins didn't refer to, at least publicly, they weren't back in 2003 going, Miguel Cabrera is a superstar. They knew it internally. They knew it. They were pumping him privately, but publicly they're like, we don't want to, we want this kid to just fit in. And when Stanton got called up at age 20, Freddie Gonzalez was the manager. He went so far out of his way to say, guys, let's pump the brakes. What if Stanton only hits 20 homers instead of 40 homers? Then everyone's going to be disappointed in him. And meanwhile, a 20-homer season's very good. So they were going so far out of their way to not overinflate. So to have your president of baseball ops use that word, just loosely. Secondly, it's misleading to the fan base.
Yeah.
So that's why my opening damn lies, and statistics. Everything's based on a statistic. Where in their statistics does it say superstar?
It does.
You can do projectability,
but Joe, even
you could hope
with even the projectability factored in, his profile, and this is like I said before, I like Caba. I think he's going to be a very good player, but he has a Xavier Edwards bat, no power at all. No power. He'll hit maybe a home run, 2 home runs a year. Like I said, a 300 average hitter, which would be great, if everything clicks for him, switch hitter, good discipline. But that's not a star. So what are you basing off it? Are you basing it off his defense? Because I just don't see objectively how any scout can look at Caba's profile and say superstar. So why would the president of baseball operations openly say that? That to me, that screams, I don't know what a superstar is. And I'm going to say it because it makes me look good. It makes this trade look good. And it appeases to the fans like you were touching on.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a just complete smokescreen where they're just going to tell the public what they want the public to hear. And unfortunately, the people on that Zoom call didn't question it. At least to our knowledge, they're just like, oh, okay, well, superstar. Well, guess what? We've had a lot of losing in Miami, but we've had a lot of really good players in Miami, and we've had superstars in Miami.
Multiple
Yelich, in my opinion, isn't a superstar, and he is an MVP, and they could have won a second MVP, very close to winning back-to-back MVPs. But Yelich was a star.
Yeah.
But he's not a perennial, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
He could now if he had done that over multiple years. Obviously Yelich has back issues and such, but he's a franchise caliber player. There's no doubt that 100%. Yelich, because he came into it, tapped into his power better and so forth. But again, it's like, and what people have told me is this kid could be a really, really effective table setter. So this is your top of the order, switch hitting, speedy, guy who plays the game right by all accounts. But let's even take it further to the team that traded him and Dave Dombrowski, who knows something about player development and building championship teams. This kid's not their best shortstop prospect. Their number one prospect is Aiden Miller. So
Right.
the Phillies were able to move someone in their farm system that wasn't even their best at that position.
Yeah, let alone overall.
And I don't even hear anyone in the Phillies calling Miller a superstar. But it's like, so, and it gets back to the nut of how the Marlins think they're going to flip this whenever they think winning's going to happen, is their brilliance, meaning of how they develop, is going to be far superior, and they're going to develop people at a percentage or whatever at a rate faster than other teams, which is mind-boggling to me that they can honestly believe that. But they're counting on taking guys who are always a letter grade below what they really are and making them that. Superstars have A grades. Yeah. Nobody has an A grade on this guy. They got B grades on him, which is a big league regular. But they don't have A grades.
You have a player development system that has questions behind it, and frankly they haven't proved that their development system is top tier yet. In fact, all the evidence points to the opposite, whereas it's a struggling player development system. And we've seen that with, historically, prospects, draft picks come in, they don't reach their full potential. So there's a real test of blind faith if you're a Marlins fan, where you're looking at this and saying the Marlins are going to take Cava at 19 and transform him into a player that is, his ceiling is above what it's projected to be right now. Until I see it happen, there's going to be questions behind it. And I'm not going to blindly tell fans on my podcast or this podcast or on Twitter that, hey, this player development system is the best of the best, because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen any results. And if someone out there can find a prospect in the Marlins system that has exceeded expectations beyond belief and has shown a quick turnaround, I would like you to show me, because right now the Marlins farm system is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy to understand. They prioritize speed, they prioritize tools, and they don't prioritize production. They prioritize projectability. The issue with that,
if you got an exit field, let's stick with position players because that's the players they've acquired. We've talked about TJ Morlando had 112 or whatever mile an hour exit velo at the combine, and boom, he's on the board. The model says that, boom, he's a Marlin.
Right.
And from all indications, and I hope Morlando becomes a really good player. I'm not wilching against players becoming good.
Not at all.
I won't do that to them. But it's like, all accounts, objectively, the 2024 Marlins draft was pretty average.
Yeah.
And when you're banking on drafting being such a big part of what you're doing, and you're already had a draft that was pretty average and other teams have already drafted better, you just punted year one of the Peter Bendix years draft, because it's like, and that's not to say they won't have big leaguers coming out of this draft, but they're just, again, look at the players that they're wanting. They let Berger leave, but they're like, oh, Jonah Bride has X number of exit velo and his hard hit rate. And, I still, everyone talks about the genius of all their infrastructure and their data. Now, Jeremiah, I have videos up on my channel here of within the last few weeks where I went out and saw some high school pitchers pitch. They've been gracious enough to let me stand literally right next to these players. And one of the schools has Rapsodo. The other one has TrackMan. And after these pitchers, and these pitchers I'm talking about are already, many of them have already got D1 scholarships to SEC, ACC powerhouses. After every pitch, what was my break on that pitch? The guy in the pitching coach with the iPad, it's this. What's my spin rate? This. What's my vertical break? It's this. High school, my point being is, our high schools in Broward are using the same technology the Marlins are using.
Yeah.
What do they have that's going to be so much more advanced that
Yeah,
if you go to the Marlins, you're going to go from being this to this. Where is that going to come
I
from?
haven't seen anything indicate that the analytics department that here's the thing is that the fans who are completely on board with this model of running an organization keep referring to the analytics department as leading the way. My question is, what are the analytics department doing? What are they doing to go above and beyond what everyone else is doing, like you touched on? Because openly, there's no information out there that the Marlins are trying some new groundbreaking technology or groundbreaking analytical model to put themselves in a clear advantageous position to other teams. I don't know exactly how you can look at the Marlins and say they're doing one thing better than, say, the Giants analytical team, or fill in what team. Like, what are they doing that's going to push them to be so much better than everybody else? And that's all these fans are banking on. I'm not hating on analytics. It's great. You need analytics. But where are the Marlins exceeding
Where's their separator? Where's their
exactly?
Yeah? What is separating them? What is putting them on this level nobody else is? And I know they do some really quirky things in their player development stuff. So it's like, so whoever's coming in is going to be doing stuff potentially drastically different than they did elsewhere. And let's make this clear: this isn't the Rays way. They don't even have former Rays working here. I love when they say, "Oh, this is how the Rays do it." So Luzardo is. For the other point with the Luzardo move is, where does that upgrade the 2025 team? It severely downgrades it, and it severely hurts the pitchers they're going to be counting on. Now you can talk about some of the kids they got in the right-hander they got in the Arise trade from San Diego, or some. It's opening up opportunity. But you know what? You're talking about a long season, and someone's going to have to log innings, and someone's going to have to, there's going to be injuries. There's going to be underperformance. There's going to be every year. It's the same way. Someone's going to overperform. Someone's going to underperform. Someone you're counting on. And then someone you're not counting on is going to get hurt. Someone you didn't count on to get hurt is going to be great. And, so you got all these factors because the game isn't played on a device.
No.
As much as these people want it to be, those that are buying in. And again, I'm about what's best for the players. So when you're putting players like Akaba in a position where I'm a superstar and he hears that, and then if he hears this podcast, I'll show them. Fine. If we create a little chip on the shoulder of someone and they become great because of whatever, but it's like, that's not really the way you do it. I don't think Juan Soto is going to sit around because all the Yankee fans have turned on him now and say that, so Juan Soto can't field. So Juan Soto can't, he's overpaid or he's one-dimensional. All I know is he's got a Hall of Fame profile that he's building with a World Series ring and a World Series loss. And, he's joining a market that's going to, keep him in the limelight for a long, long time. It's like there's no complete play. The only complete player, it's not even Mike Trout anymore, not even close. I guess it's Ohtani. Because he could steal a bag, he could hit a home run, he could strike you out. Like he literally, he's like but there's not, 99% of the players in the league have flaws.
Yeah.
And that's where the lie is the statistics. They'll sit around, Jake Berger's this. Yeah, we know what he isn't. And we know what he is. And, obviously a team like the Rangers saw value in him. So it's like, I don't get a lot of this aspect of it. And even like you're talking about the system, like how good is the system? Okay, it's better. Well, it needed to be. How could it not be? Because you traded everything to get your system. But I'm still, and let's see how it turns out. I'm still a believer that Noble Meyer's their number one prospect. And I know only Thomas White's there because on production last year. But I think Noble Meyer is there. And I think this year he's going to show it, and we'll see if I'm right on that one. But even if both of those kids just keep flourishing. Pitching is so you don't know when's their ETA. Now with Luzardo out of there, you're accelerating the ETAs of some of these kids, and it's a little bit like Yuri in 23, where they kind of needed Yuri to get to the playoffs, but he didn't have a lot of mileage on the car, and it's like he's dominating Double A, but he's still a baby, and we got to get him up here to win. And what did that do? It got him up here. They didn't know how to handle it right. He's dominant, and they're getting him out of the game. They send him down to protect service time. They do all. They shut him down. They ramp him up, but then he gets hurt, and it carries over into last year. And what happens, and he gets Tommy John. So what's this doing to the trajectory of your two best pitching prospects? Yeah. To them, I'm sure they're thinking, I'm getting to the big leagues because I want players to think at 15 years old they should be in the big leagues. That's where it goes. The players are the players. Every player should think, I'm a big leaguer. I'm a big leaguer. I got to get to big leaguers. But you need the adults in the room to say no, and not just no because the save service time. No, for the best interest of the player and the organization and the development of that player. So everyone's going to be now just they see an opening. We got an opening now. This rotation spot, Luzardo's gone. So now it's my turn.
Yeah. And to touch on your point with the Tampa Bay model, I saw a tweet the other day. It was really funny. And I was just staring at it like, is this real? Someone said he was a Tampa Bay Rays fan. And I can tell he doesn't know a lot about baseball just with the verbiage of this tweet. Because he says, Marlins fans, I don't understand why you all hate what's going on. I love it. The Rays, Peter Bendix, brought 7 playoff seasons to Tampa Bay. Once the winning starts, it doesn't stop. And I said, Bendix didn't bring 7 consecutive playoff appearances. No. Let's establish that first off. Peter Bendix was not the orchestrator behind the Rays' success. And the number one difference between the Rays and the Marlins, and you can do your research if you're listening to this podcast, watching it, Tampa Bay's player development system is objectively top 5.
Far
it's
better.
Far above Miami's.
Far better.
And their farm system.
And it's a big part of why they're winning.
Right.
And Bennings had nothing to do with that.
And their farm system was consistently top 5 for years. And you had stars. You want to use superstars? They had stars coming up. Blake Snell, Tampa Bay. You had Wander Franco, who obviously is in the big leagues. But if he had, they signed him to that huge extension. Superstar profile.
Well, he was a superstar. He's
right,
the profile.
Exactly.
Wander
and he got superstar money.
And what's the Rays way going to look like? Because you're already seeing with him gone. Right. What that's going to mean that is obviously it's a different dynamic. Jose Fernandez passed away. Franco has his legal issues. But in terms of what it meant to the player being removed from the franchise, that Wander Franco thing could be as devastating to Tampa as Jose Fernandez was to. Because let's put it this way. For all those people saying, oh, why was I all on board with Marlins doing the 2017 fire sale? Jose Fernandez died. That's a big reason.
Right.
Another big reason, you didn't have these extra playoff spots. If you had extra playoff spots, I guarantee you Stanton, Yelich would not have been traded. So it's like these were factors. And a generational talent which you signed early and you locked up to a 10-year deal at 180 or whatever it was, 180 million. That was going to keep the Rays way going.
Right.
Because at least you got a superstar locked up at a premier position.
Well, and the trades they made were really good trades too. Like they were getting players back who they could.
Rosarena. I mean, yeah. Right. And Rosarena, like no one really saw that, and all of a sudden he's like playing at an all-star level, and
Where does the Marlins farm system even rank going into next year? Because it's not top 10. I can tell you that right now.
And to be honest, I'm not blown away by rankings anyway, and I get it. And I like rankings are good for conversational pieces, and people because keep this in mind. Sandy Alcantara, I don't think was at the time of the trade a top 100 prospect. I don't think JT Realmuto ever was a top 100 prospect. Yeah. So make with what you will. And Logan Morrison, I love Logan. He was like the number 10 ranked prospect in baseball at one point. The Marlins had Stanton, at 3 or 2. Yeah, Stanton that year that Stanton got called up. You had the number one prospect was Steven Strasburg. Number two was Jason Hayward, and 3 was Stanton. And I
Yeah.
believe 9, 10, or 11 was Logan Morrison. And Lomo, didn't have a very lengthy or highly productive career, obviously. So make of it what you will. I do like the tools. I do like, all that aspect. And, I equate this back, and I meant to do the research on it, and maybe the next time we do it. I remember like year 1 or 2 on the Dembo years. I'd speak to Gary on the backfields in spring training, and I'm like, the Marlins in the last couple of years of the Loria years, you had stars and some superstars because you had Stanton, you had Yelich, Ozuna, like really like emerged as a great player. Real Muto just emerged, and you had D. Gordon comes in. He was an all-star and played great, and you had this nice team. And then you look around in spring training on the backfields, and you're like, okay, where's the reinforcements? And they just weren't there. Their drop off. Like they basically had 30-man. They obviously everyone's a 40-man roster, but pretty much past 30. It's a big reason why those teams fell short of being good enough to be a playoff team. So I said, okay, well now I'm looking on the backfields and I'm seeing big leaguers, but I'm seeing big leaguers as if role players. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm seeing big leaguers, but are they going to be good big leaguers? Are they going to be better than average big leaguers? I don't know. So I said, you have more big leaguers in your system, but you don't have any difference makers. Where's your impact?
Right.
And I kind of see here, and I get it. We could look at the names, and if it pans out, obviously the De Los Santos kid can be impactful. Obviously, if Xavier Edwards, even if he hits 300, that's impactful. They're players you could see can be impactful. But the collective and, okay, how do you put it together? Because ultimately what's being lost, and I don't want it to be lost on the market, at some point it's about your big league roster.
Yeah.
It's not about, oh, well, you know what? Let's say Otto Lopez is struggling at second base. Well, he's struggling, but they got the good kid in AAA who's just there to get reps. He could come up and replace him because his numbers. So everyone's attention goes to Jacksonville to see what this kid's doing. And then he comes up and he replaces Otto and does well for a little bit, and then he gets figured out a little bit. But where's it moving the needle? When you go for the division?
Right.
When are you going to, or is your goal always just going to be the 6th wild card, and anything better than that's gravy? Because that's kind of what they're sustainable. It's just what sustainable what? When Sandy's gone, who's your ace? So where's your ace coming from?
That's the thing, is that there's no.
It's like,
there's
where's
no,
your? You can't just.
It's just
Go
there's
ahead.
no projectable. Like I can look at this organization and say, in 3 years they're going to be an absolute wagon. They're going to be a powerhouse, because it's not there. You've traded a 30-year roster last year, and now it's, who do you have left to trade? You got Sandy. You have eventually Xavier Edwards, a couple years down the road. And the talent is just, there's nothing.
You got relievers. Your relievers are going to net you what relievers net you.
Right.
They're going to get, role-ish type players that, can kind of help plug holes.
And I go back to Atlanta, and I really want to mention this, is that Atlanta, if you remember, they're a great run organization. They're just top of the top right there. When they went through their lean years, 2015, 2016, even 2017, they were still losing. And you looked at their big league product, they had nothing. But you know what they did? They went out and signed guys who were eventually going to be part of the core. They got Nick Markakis, who was there for 2016 in a 98-loss team. They got Mike Fultonevich, who was a really good number 2 pitcher for them. Julio Teheran stuck with them. Freddie Freeman stuck with them. They didn't just trade everybody, because they established a core. They drafted well. They had a core. They knew they were losing, but they could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And guess what? They've been in the playoffs the last better part of a decade. Okay.
Yeah, that's sustainable.
That's sustainable right there. The Marlins. Where do they go? You know, where is
Well,
their window? It's not open. It's not even visible.
okay, so let's take it a step further with the Braves. Okay, you had Freddie Freeman. Obviously, you win a World Series with Freddie. Then you choose to not go to his dollar figure and you let him walk. So you
Right.
lose him. You recover with Matt Olson, which is a remarkable recovery to get a player of that caliber. And what do they do with Matt Olson? They extend him.
Yep.
So, better than average, all-star caliber first baseman. Austin Riley, one of the, on his best days, better than average, you know, top third-ish for third baseman. Lock him up. Dansby Swanson. They don't want to go there money wise. If they end up being smart, they let him go, and so they strategically see that when Bendix was talking when he came in day one, win that eye in the now and eye in the future and such. That's how I thought he would play it. You had last year's team coming off a playoff. You sit there and you go, okay, well, we don't really have much money on the books. If we keep Luis Ariz, we bring back Soler, we show the market that we're at least going to go for it. We still had some pitching. We knew Sandy was down. You could have maybe signed. I always forget his name. The right-handed pitcher from Detroit. He was out there. I forgot who. Whatever. I'm drawing a blank on his name. But you could have signed a guy like that to plug him in. In the rotation to kind of strengthen the rotation. All I know is your bullpen was in the playoffs left and right last year. And even one of them who was as good a reliever as anyone in the league last year was A.J. Puck, and he was on an 89-win team and pitched great. So you had a playoff bullpen. Look at the playoffs last year. You had Ariz playing and producing in San Diego. You had Jazz and John Birdie producing in New York. You had what's his name, Garrett Hampson and Gurriel playing in Kansas City in the playoffs. I'm sure I'm missing a player or two. You were having all these ex-Marlins who are on the 23 team back in the playoffs with different teams. So you really just lost Sandy, and I get it. Yuri got hurt too, and then you could say, oh well, Luzardo, but the point is they didn't even, as we noted before, they didn't try. But I was thinking you could just kind of do it that way. Then if you have to move guys, you start moving them there, and meanwhile you're in that 75 to 85 win window. If things break right, you don't take it 100 losses, and you could just strategically, I thought they were going to do it that way. Instead, they just went, we're going to do nothing.
Nothing. They've signed two
and
guys.
then doing nothing is stepping backwards because everybody else did something. So you're immediately step backwards. And then just an appeasement because they don't want to be completely laughed out of the building. They $5 million is all going to spend. And, obviously Tim Anderson's the one who took the money, and it was a complete disaster. So foolish spending. It's like I thought he could do it that way, and at least Bendix could have seen what he got on the from carried over, give Skip a fighting chance, but he gave Skip no fighting chance and basically wasted 2024. Remember last year at this time? Oh, infrastructure. Then we find out that was all a lie because they replacing everything now. Yeah. Everybody was on the last years of their contracts. Was what they did when Bendix came in. He was hired so late. The people that were there were all given it those are 2-year deals, and it's the last year of it. They had those contracts, and I'm sure the Sherman, everyone else puts on 1-year deals as placeholders, just to have a staff. Cleaned them all out. Cleaned them out of the draft department. Cleaned them out. Half of the scouting department's got pro side, amateur side, the analytics side. Like I said, the Miles Lewis's are out the door. Dan Greenlee's out the door. All these people. Oz is out the door. So where was the infrastructure? Now the infrastructure is they got probability of this, they got an AI that, they got this, they got a new robot. I don't know. They got a robot vacuum cleaner that comes in, the manual thing, and on their phone, they turn it on, they go sweeping up the room. I mean, It's like, this is...
Don't forget, this is the same analytical department that said it was a good idea because it was analytics. that said it's a good idea to start AJ Puck in the rotation at the beginning of the last season. Like, this is the same department we're working with here.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing.
Because they were trying to find a cheap alternative.
Right.
How are we going to get guys in rotation? Instead of signing someone.
Let's throw AJ Puck in the rotation. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, he did it in college.
Right. Yeah.
So,
come on, guys.
99%. So did 99% of the relievers that went to college were starters in college.
Right.
Crazy. As we kind of wind this down, our last segment, let's kind of touch on payroll. What is too much, because what we're seeing is now that the Marlins could be in a little bit of a pinch, courtesy of the Athletic kind of noting, and it's kind of funny because right after the trade, I even was like talking among some people. I'm like, at what point is the union going to just jump in and say what's going on down there? And now we're finding out that the Marlins are going to be receiving an upwards of $70 million in revenue sharing, and if their payroll is well below, that's going to create some grievance possibilities, and so now the same people that were thinking that signing a Michael Conforto for $17 million may be like, oh, maybe we should have signed someone like that, and that on a 1-year deal, because he at least is somebody people have heard of and might want to buy a ticket to see, and you could always kind of flip them at the deadline, type of thing. Now they're in a pinch where they may have to take on some bad contracts, which, creates even more of a financial mess that they don't really want to have to deal with.
For one of the cheaper teams in baseball to have to resort to trading for a bad contract, especially after you just got the Avi Garcia, fiasco out of town, which you're still paying him $12 million this year, by the way, just so everyone's clear. He's still on the books. And now, because you're not active in free agency and you've signed 2 players, to major league deals, Eric Wagaman, who, full transparency, I've never heard of him in my life, and Tim Anderson, you're going to have to do something, because this is just downright embarrassing. It's embarrassing because 2024, the payroll was slashed. We all know that. This team is projected to have $30 million less than the start of last year. Like, let that sink in. $30 million less. How much lower can you go? But they openly say Bruce wants to win. He wants to win more than anybody. He has money, and I'm going to spend it. Well, you're not spending it. I mean, the fans aren't dumb. We're not dumb. We see what's before our eyes, and I have no faith that this team will trade for a bad contract to get a better prospect. They didn't do that at the deadline. They never do that. We talked about Josh Bell, for example, when he went to the Diamondbacks, where maybe you can trade him and pay down his salary to get a prospect in return. They didn't do any of that because they don't want to pay money. They didn't want to pay $5 million. I believe they paid 3.5, maybe 4. And it's like, shot to the heart. We can't spend that money. Dear Lord, like, come on.
Yeah, it puts them in a really bad spot, and this is where folks out there listening, the salaries are only going up. There's enough revenue in the sport. Yeah. So when you're looking at, just basic players, Luis Ariz at $10 million was so offensive. Well, guess what? You're gonna wish you could sign him for $10 million, because you're going to get guys that are far worse than him that are going to be $13 million. You're going to be spending that on relievers. You're going to be spending that. So you've already established that you don't have the wherewithal and the desire to sign anybody, and which word gets around. So this now, who are you even going to attract? I heard someone say like a Randall Grichuk or someone like that. Well, why would Grichuk sign here just to get traded when he could go to a playoff caliber team to round out their roster in order to be there and be in camp and not have to do the move my family twice in a year and hope he gets traded somewhere? And really, what are you getting for Randall Grichuk at a trade deadline?
Right.
You're not going to get anything for him. So So it's like those caliber players are going to already be looking at the Dodgers or someone like that. You know, or you could even those guys could carry to spring training. And if one of those bench players get hurt, which they do, right before opening day, you're in a place you're ready to win right away. And
Even
you're rounding out their roster.
even without extensions or long-term deals, which for the Marlins, let's say a 4-year deal for the Marlins is a long-term deal. That's a long-term commitment for Miami. Take that out of the equation. The short prove it deals, we like to throw out the word prove it deals, for a guy that's coming off an injury or a struggling season. They're exceeding expectations. Walker Buehler, coming off injury, he had an injury riddled year, started off pretty ineffective, wasn't his normal self. 1 year, $20 million with the Red Sox. Just for 1 year. The Marlins aren't doing that. They're not going to get Conforto. And Conforto was a profile I thought 2 years ago the Marlins might take a look at. He takes a 1 year, $17 million prove it deal. It's just they're not going to spend the money for a prove it deal. They're not going to spend the money for any extensions, because if they had, last year they would have extended Jazz Chisholm. They wouldn't have traded Jake Berger before he hit arbitration. They don't want to pay Luzardo $8 million in arb because it's $8 million. Like this is they're so cheap right now.
No.
What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I'm not losing Jeremiah. We're gonna kind of wrap this one up because my signal's kind of going. So I think we're gonna kind of end it right there. And you back?
Yeah, I'm
here. Yeah. I'm having a little signal. I think the internet's kind of hiccuping on me a little bit. So we're going to kind of end it on that one. I think we made our point. We did want to address it. Where the rays of light here are going to be. There are some players when spring training rolls around worth observing. So be a fan of the players. See how they do it along all measures. Clayton McCullough is a great guy and kind of the right disposition for the challenge that's going to await him, and it's going to be a tough one for him. So we'll root for Clayton. For the front office, the advice remains: just be a little more transparent with people. Do not keep insulting everybody and treating like you're the only people that have any clue what's going on. Because right now you are what your record says. You took a playoff team. You could say it all you want. You could pump in the ear of anyone else, push your narrative out. But you took over a playoff team in 20, and after 23, you shredded it down to 100 losses. And I don't want to hear they were 22-32 or whatever in the last 50-something games. That means nothing. Garbage time to me means nothing. Yes, you see signs of people doing some good things, but every year's different. And you got to look, and you're looking what the NL East is, what the National League is. The Los Angeles Dodgers are unbelievable. The NL West is amazingly strong. You're seeing what the Cubs are starting to do to try to get back in it. The Cardinals now are in the rebuild mode, but they aren't going to stay there long. So you got the Brewers. So where is the light at the end of the tunnel? So at some point, please invest in your big league product, because ultimately fans want to be fans of big league teams, not prospect teams. We want to know what the standings are. We don't want to hear what Keith Law says about everybody. And no offense to Keith Law or MLB Pipeline or Baseball America or all those who make a living on prospect, hugging and watching, and just bring competitive big league caliber baseball to South Florida. That's all we ask. Your final thoughts.
If you want to win in Miami, you want to bring a crowd. It starts with winning. You got to win. People in Miami care about winners. You see that with the Florida Panthers. You saw that with the Heat. The issue right now is I'm gonna close out my take with this is there's 3 things that every successful major league organization does well. They establish an on-field product, a good core, they draft well, and they utilize the farm system. You have to have a combination of 3. And the final thing is they utilize free agency. The Astros are the team that has been the most consistent over the past decade, apart from the Dodgers. They hit it off in the draft. The Marlins have to draft well. They have to establish a core on the field to build around, and that's when the prospects come in to supplement it. You cannot just rely on one of those methods or you will never go anywhere. And that's where I kind of stand right now.
No, that's well said, and that's a good spot to end on this one. So we will wrap that up. Again, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe to the channel, follow our content. 2025 is going to be big. That's all I can tell you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I will be hitting on the Marlins much more regularly in this type of format, as well as the high school level, and the kids have been great. Message too: support high school baseball for all those fans. And college baseball. We have a lot of really good baseball in South Florida. Big part of our channel is just growth of the sport, but ultimately, all the kids that I'm seeing want to be in the big leagues, and I want those kids I'm covering at the prep level, to want to be Miami Marlins. It's only fitting that this market should have that. But you also have to have a product and an organization committed to you. And if you're not investing in the community, and everybody's dealing with their vision and everyone's well-intentioned. Everyone has ideas. Everybody has a lot of ideas. Those who execute, Jeremiah used that word earlier, those who execute and actually can back it up, those are the ones that, succeed. So with that, Jeremiah, we'll be catching up with you. I know you have some big plans in 25, and you're going to have some fun announcements in the near future. And stick with it. This kid is on top of it. Jeremiah Geiger, thank you, buddy. Our audience, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all the good stuff. Enjoy. Everyone treat everyone nicely. I know on social media I don't always, but don't always do as I do as I say. With that, I'll leave you guys with that, and we will catch everyone in the